Commander Thexara watched through the bridge viewports as another colony ship exploded in a brilliant flash of orange and white. The massive vessel, carrying 15,000 civilians from the agricultural world of Nexus Prime, became nothing more than scattered debris and fading light. She pressed her four-fingered hand against the cool metal of her command chair, feeling the vibrations of weapons fire through the ship's hull. "Status report," she commanded, her voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. Lieutenant Velen looked up from his tactical station, his blue-scaled face pale with exhaustion. "We've lost another 12 ships in the last hour, Commander. The evacuation fleet is down to 43 vessels. The Devourer ships, they're systematically hunting down every ship that tries to escape." Thexara closed her eyes for a moment. 3 days ago, the Kalani system had been home to over 2 million souls spread across 5 worlds and dozens of orbital stations. Now, fewer than 500,000 remained alive, packed into whatever ships could carry them away from the nightmare that had descended upon their peaceful corner of the galaxy. The Devourers had come without warning. Their black ships, twisted and organic-looking, had simply appeared at the system's edge. No communication, no demands, no negotiation. They had immediately begun their grisly work, consuming everything in their path. Their weapons didn't just destroy ships and stations. They somehow absorbed the energy and matter, growing stronger with each victory. "Commander," called Navigator Zenith from her position near the star charts, "the quantum tunnel generators are offline. We can't create another jump point. The Devourers have somehow disrupted the entire system's spatial fabric. And our conventional drives won't get us out of the system before they catch us," added Chief Engineer Krathos over the communication system. "These cargo haulers and civilian transports weren't built for speed." Thexara studied the tactical display showing the remaining fleet. 43 ships, mostly civilian craft designed for cargo or short-range travel, fleeing before an enemy that seemed unstoppable. The fastest ships in their group could manage maybe 60% of light speed, but the Devourer vessels moved like predators, cutting off escape routes and herding the survivors like prey animals. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Velen's voice cracked slightly, "long-range sensors are picking up movement. 3 Devourer hunting packs, closing from different vectors. They'll intercept us in approximately 4 hours." The bridge fell silent except for the steady hum of the life support systems. Thexara looked around at her crew. These weren't military personnel. They were civilian volunteers who had stayed behind to coordinate the evacuation. Her own ship, the Star's Hope, was nothing more than a converted research vessel with basic defensive capabilities. "Options?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "We could scatter the fleet," suggested Velen. "Some ships might slip through. And abandon the slower vessels, the colony ships with children aboard." Thexara shook her head. "No. We leave together or not at all." Chief Tactical Officer Morin, a veteran who had served in the border skirmishes 20 years ago, spoke up from his station. "Commander, I've been analyzing the Devourer attack patterns. They're not just randomly destroying ships. They're feeding on them, converting the mass and energy into something else. Each ship they consume makes the remaining Devourers larger and more powerful." "What are you suggesting?" "If we can't outrun them, and we can't outfight them, maybe we can make ourselves too costly to consume. The research data from the science stations showed that the Devourers seem to prefer high-energy targets. If we could somehow mask our energy signatures, reduce our profile—" "We'd have to shut down most systems," interrupted Engineer Krathos. "Life support, artificial gravity, even basic communications. And even then, it might only buy us a few hours." Thexara moved to the navigation console and called up a detailed map of the local space. The Kalani system sat at the edge of explored territory, far from the major shipping lanes and military patrol routes. The nearest Galactic Union fleet was at least 6 days away, assuming they even received a distress signal. "Send out the emergency beacon," she decided. Full spectrum broadcast, all frequencies. If there's anyone out there who can hear us..." "Commander," Navigator Zenith interrupted, her voice uncertain. "There might be something else we can try. The ancient hyperspace charts show some unusual readings in this region. Spatial anomalies that the early explorers couldn't explain. Deep space sensors have been picking up strange energy patterns from the direction of the galactic rim." "What kind of anomalies?" "Unknown. The readings don't match any known phenomena, but the energy signatures are massive. Whatever's out there, it's big." Lieutenant Velen looked up from his station. "Ma'am, should I include those coordinates in the distress beacon? If there's someone out there..." Thexara hesitated. The galactic rim was unexplored space, beyond the boundaries of known civilization. Sending a distress signal into the unknown could bring help, or it could attract something even worse than the Devourers. But with 43 ships full of civilians and no other options, what choice did they have? "Do it," she ordered. "Broadcast on all frequencies, including the old emergency channels. If there's any intelligence out there, friendly or otherwise, they need to know what's happening here." The communications officer, a young Altarian named Sithel, began working frantically at her console. "Composing emergency message now, Commander. Broadcasting in 17 different languages and mathematical sequences." As the distress signal began transmitting into the void, Thexara allowed herself a moment to remember what they were fighting to save. The agricultural colonies had been peaceful places, where families raised their children among green fields under alien suns. The research stations had been unlocking the secrets of the universe, advancing knowledge for the benefit of all species. The trade stations had brought different cultures together, creating the kind of harmonious cooperation that the Galactic Union had been founded to protect. All of it was gone now, consumed by creatures that seemed to exist only to feed and grow. The Devourers showed no signs of intelligence beyond their predatory cunning. They didn't communicate, didn't negotiate, didn't even seem to understand surrender. They simply consumed everything in their path and moved on to the next target. "Commander," Velen called out urgently, "the Devourer packs are accelerating. Time to intercept is now 3 hours and 17 minutes. And there's something else." "What?" "They're not just hunting us randomly anymore. They're coordinating their approach, trying to funnel us toward something. Long-range sensors are detecting a massive Devourer construct directly ahead of our escape route." On the main display, the tactical situation became clear. The smaller Devourer ships were herding the refugee fleet toward a massive structure that defied easy description. It was kilometers long, organic and twisted like the other Devourer ships, but orders of magnitude larger. Energy readings suggested it was some kind of processing facility designed to break down captured ships and convert them into new Devourer vessels. "How long until we reach the construct's engagement range?" Thexara asked. "At our current speed, approximately 6 hours, but the hunting packs will reach us first." Engineer Krathos's voice crackled over the intercom. "Commander, I've been monitoring the civilian ships. Many of them are running low on power. The constant high-speed flight is draining their reactors faster than expected. Some of the older cargo haulers might not last another 2 hours at this pace." Thexara closed her eyes and made a decision that she knew would haunt her forever, if she lived long enough to be haunted by anything. "All ships," she broadcast on the fleet frequency. "This is Commander Thexara of the Star's Hope. Reduce speed to maximum sustainable cruise. Begin power conservation protocols. Shut down all non-essential systems." "Ma'am," Lieutenant Velen protested quietly, "that will allow the Devourers to catch us sooner." "I know," she replied, "but if we maintain this pace, half our ships will be dead in space before the Devourers even reach us. At least this way, we'll face them with working ships and full crews." The next hour passed in tense silence as the refugee fleet settled into its final configuration. The ships arranged themselves in a loose formation, with the few vessels that had any defensive capability positioned to protect the purely civilian craft. The Star's Hope took position at the rear of the formation, along with two converted mining ships that had been retrofitted with basic weapons. "Emergency beacon is still broadcasting," reported Communications Officer Sithil. "No response so far. I'm trying to boost the signal strength, but our power reserves are limited." Navigator Zenith looked up from her console. "Commander, I'm still picking up those strange energy readings from the galactic rim. Whatever's out there, it's definitely artificial. The patterns are too regular to be natural phenomena." "Distance?" "Hard to tell. The readings are unlike anything in our databases. But based on energy output, it would have to be something truly massive to register at this range." Thexara walked to the forward viewport and stared out at the stars. Somewhere among those distant lights, the Galactic Union continued its daily existence, unaware that an entire star system was being consumed by monsters from the void. Even if their distress signal reached Union space, help would arrive too late. The nearest military fleet was days away, and the Devourers would finish their work long before then. "Commander," Velen called out, his voice tight with controlled fear. "First Devourer pack will be in weapons range in 47 minutes. The lead ships are already beginning to spread out for attack formation." Through the viewport, Thexara could see them now, dark shapes against the star field, moving with predatory grace. Each ship was unique, as if grown rather than built, with organic curves and surfaces that seemed to shift and flow. They varied in size from scout vessels no larger than a fighter to massive cruisers that dwarfed anything in the refugee fleet. "All ships," she broadcast. "This is Commander Thexara. In approximately 45 minutes, we will engage the enemy. I want everyone to know that you have performed with honor and courage in these dark hours. The families and children we carry are alive because of your sacrifice and dedication." She paused, looking out at the approaching enemy. "We may not survive this encounter, but we will face it as free beings, defending those who cannot defend themselves. Whatever happens, remember that we stood together when it mattered most." As if in response to her words, the Devourer ships suddenly accelerated, their organic hulls glowing with an eerie bioluminescence. They had finished their approach and were now committed to the attack. There would be no more delays, no more time for desperate plans or miraculous rescues. The refugee fleet was alone in the darkness, 43 ships carrying the last survivors of the Kalani system, with nowhere to run and nothing left to lose. Behind them, the massive Devourer construct continued its approach, a living factory of destruction ready to process whatever remained after the hunting packs finished their work. In the communications array, the emergency beacon continued its desperate broadcast into the void, sending out coordinates and pleas for help to anyone who might be listening in the vast emptiness of space. The signal traveled at the speed of light toward the galactic rim, where strange energy readings suggested the presence of something vast and unknown. Time was running out, and hope was fading with each passing moment. Soon, the Devourers would close the final distance, and the last chapter of the Kalani system would be written in fire and darkness. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of the Leviathan, her eyes fixed on the massive holographic display that showed the edge of known space. The human battleship hung in the darkness between stars, part of Deep Patrol Fleet 7, tasked with monitoring the galactic rim for threats that might emerge from the unexplored regions beyond civilization's reach. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Commander Torres from the communications station. "We're receiving an emergency transmission, multiple species, broadcasting on old Union emergency frequencies." Chen turned toward the communications array. "Source? Approximately 47 light hours spinward. The signal is weak and degraded, but the computer is reconstructing the message now. Ma'am, it's a distress call from the Kalani system." The Admiral frowned. The Kalani system was well inside Union space, not the kind of place that usually sent distress signals toward the unexplored rim. "Put it through!" The bridge speakers crackled to life with a transmission clearly sent by someone in desperate circumstances. The voice was calm but strained, speaking in galactic standard with the precise diction of someone trying to ensure their words were understood despite signal interference. "This is Commander Thex Ara of the research vessel Star's Hope, broadcasting emergency beacon from Kalani system coordinates. We are under attack by unknown hostile forces. Multiple worlds destroyed. Civilian evacuation fleet of 43 ships requesting immediate assistance. Enemy vessels demonstrate unknown technology, possibly consuming destroyed ships. We are trapped and unable to escape system. Time is critical. Any forces capable of providing assistance, please respond immediately." The message repeated, followed by coordinate data and tactical information about the attacking force. Chen studied the data as it appeared on her screens, her expression growing grimmer with each detail. "Ma'am," said Commander Reeves, the ship's tactical officer, "according to this data, the entire Kalani system is under attack. 3 inhabited worlds, multiple stations, over 2 million inhabitants." "Time to reach their position at maximum acceleration?" Chen asked. 16 hours, ma'am, but that's assuming we use the experimental quantum tunnel drives that Captain Morrison's been testing. Chen activated her personal communicator. "Engineering, this is Admiral Chen. I need Captain Morrison in the command center immediately." While they waited, she pulled up the intelligence files on the Kalani system. It was a peaceful region, primarily agricultural and research-focused, with no strategic military importance. The kind of place that existed quietly on the edge of Union space, contributing to the greater galactic community through trade and knowledge rather than military power. "Admiral," Morrison's voice came through the ship's intercom before he physically arrived. "I monitored the emergency transmission. Ma'am, if you're thinking what I think you're thinking, I should warn you that the quantum tunnel drives are still experimental." Chen turned as the young engineer entered the command center, his hands already dirty from whatever project he'd been working on. Captain Morrison had been assigned to the Leviathan specifically to field-test experimental technologies that might give human forces an edge in deep space operations. "What's the risk assessment?" she asked. "In controlled tests, we've achieved successful tunneling through folded spacetime with a 93% success rate. But we've never attempted a tunnel of this distance while the ship was carrying a full combat load. The power requirements alone—" "Captain," Chen interrupted gently, 43 ships full of civilians are about to be destroyed by something that's already consumed multiple planets. What's the worst that could happen if the tunnel drive fails?" Morrison met her eyes. "Complete molecular dissociation, ma'am. The entire ship could be scattered across several light years of space. And if we don't try? Those civilians die, and whatever destroyed the Kalani system continues operating unchecked." Chen nodded. "Prep the tunnel drive, and send signals to the rest of the patrol fleet. I want every available ship converging on our position." "Ma'am," Commander Reeves looked up from his station. "Deep Patrol Fleet 7 consists of the Leviathan, 2 heavy cruisers, and 4 destroyers. Even with our full force, we'd be severely outgunned based on the tactical data in that distress signal." Admiral Chen walked to the main viewport and looked out at the stars. The Leviathan was one of the newest ships in the human fleet, built according to principles that most other species found disturbing. Where other races built ships for efficiency and comfort, humans built them for war. The Leviathan was over 2 kilometers long, bristling with weapon systems and armored with ablative plating designed to absorb punishment that would destroy lesser vessels. But it wasn't just the ship that made it formidable. It was the crew. Humans were relative newcomers to the galactic community. When they had finally developed faster-than-light travel and made contact with the Galactic Union, most species had been shocked to discover that humanity had evolved on what could only be classified as a death world. Earth was a planet where nearly everything was trying to kill everything else, where natural disasters could reshape continents, where the dominant species had survived by becoming the most successful predators in their ecosystem. Other species found human ships uncomfortable and human tactics incomprehensible. Where others sought to minimize casualties and preserve resources, humans were willing to accept losses that seemed suicidal to achieve their objectives. They called it acceptable risk and seemed genuinely puzzled when other species expressed horror at their casualty rates. But there was no denying that human military doctrine was effective. In the 3 border conflicts since humanity joined the Union, human forces had consistently achieved victory against numerically superior enemies through a combination of technological innovation, tactical flexibility, and sheer stubborn refusal to admit defeat. "All ships," Chen broadcast to the patrol fleet. "This is Admiral Chen aboard the Leviathan. We have received a priority distress signal from Union civilians under attack by unknown hostiles. We are proceeding to render assistance immediately. Form up for maximum acceleration toward provided coordinates." The responses came back quickly. Captain Rodriguez of the heavy cruiser Valkyrie, Captain Kim of the heavy cruiser Thunderbird, and the commanders of destroyers, Reaper, Phantom, Lightning, and Storm, all confirmed readiness to depart immediately. "Admiral," Morrison called from the engineering station he'd commandeered, "Quantum tunnel drive is charged and ready. I've coordinated with the other ship's engineering teams. We can tunnel the entire fleet simultaneously, but the power drain will leave us operating at reduced capacity for approximately 2 hours after emergence." "Acceptable," Chen replied. "All ships report ready for tunnel jump. Initialize quantum field generators." Through the viewport, space began to twist and distort as the experimental drives created a fold in space-time. The other ships in the patrol fleet became visible as their own tunnel fields synchronized with the Leviathans. What they were attempting had never been done before, tunneling an entire fleet across dozens of light years in a matter of minutes. "Field stability holding," Morrison reported. "Initiating tunnel collapse in 3, 2, 1. "Mark!" Reality twisted inside out. For a fraction of a second that felt like hours, the ship existed in a space between spaces, where the normal laws of physics bent and warped around them. Then, with a sensation like falling upward, they emerged back into normal space. "Navigation, report our position," Chen ordered immediately. "Kalani system, ma'am. We're approximately 8 million kilometers from the distress signal coordinates. The tunnel jump was successful." "Tactical, what do we see?" Commander Reeves was already working frantically at his station, trying to make sense of the sensor data. "Ma'am, I'm reading 43 ships in loose formation, moving at approximately 60% of light speed toward the edge of the system. Energy signatures suggest mostly civilian craft with minimal defensive capability. And the hostiles? Unknown ship types, Admiral. The computer can't match them to any known design. They appear to be organic? The hulls don't show the regular patterns of constructed vessels. Multiple groups closing on the civilian fleet from different vectors. Chen studied the tactical display as it updated with more detailed sensor information. The enemy ships were unlike anything in the databases. They moved with a fluid grace that suggested living creatures rather than mechanical constructs, and their energy signatures showed patterns that defied conventional understanding of ship design. "Communications, open a channel to the civilian fleet," she ordered. "Channel open, ma'am." "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Deep Space Fleet, aboard the battleship Leviathan. We have received your distress signal and are moving to provide assistance. Please transmit your current tactical situation and any intelligence on hostile forces." The response came back within moments. The same voice they'd heard in the original distress signal, but now filled with desperate hope. "Admiral Chen, this is Commander Thexera. Thank the stars you're here. We have 43 ships carrying approximately 400,000 civilians, under pursuit by hostile vessels we're calling Devourers. They've already consumed 3 planets and dozens of ships. Their technology appears to convert matter and energy from destroyed targets into new ships or enhanced capabilities. Chen exchanged glances with her tactical officer. Ships that grew stronger by consuming their enemies represented a threat unlike anything in their experience. Commander Thexara, we're moving to intercept the hostile forces. Please maintain your current course and speed. We'll handle this. Admiral, with respect, you don't understand. These things destroyed our entire system defense fleet. They seem to absorb weapons fire and grow stronger from each ship they destroy. We've been running for 3 days and there's nowhere left to go. Chen looked at the tactical display showing the approaching enemy. Dozens of ships of various sizes, all moving with that same organic fluidity, closing in on the refugee fleet from multiple directions. Behind them, sensors showed something even larger, a massive construct that defied easy classification. Commander, she replied calmly, you haven't seen what humans do to things that threaten civilians. All civilian ships maintain course. Combat fleet, prepare for engagement. This ends now. The 7 ships of Deep Patrol Fleet 7 accelerated toward the enemy formation, their hulls gleaming in the light of the Kalani system's star. The Leviathan led the charge, its massive bulk dwarfing even the heavy cruisers that flanked it. To the aliens watching from the refugee ships, the human vessels looked as alien as the Devourers, built for war in ways that peaceful species found disturbing. Ma'am, Reeves called out, lead elements of the Devourer fleet are changing course to intercept us. Looks like they're curious about the new arrivals. Perfect, Chen replied. Let them come. All ships, prepare for combat. Load all tubes, charge all batteries, and prep the new experimental weapons. Time to see how these things handle some proper human engineering. Admiral, Morrison called from engineering. The tunnel drives are still cycling down, but I can have full power to weapons and shields in approximately 12 minutes. We'll make do with what we have. These civilians have been running scared for 3 days. Time to show them what happens when humanity goes to war. The first Devourer ships reached weapons range and opened fire with energy beams that seemed to tear at the fabric of space itself. The shots struck the Leviathan's forward shields, causing them to flare and buckle under the assault. Shields down to 78%, reported the damage control officer. Those weapons are using some kind of disruptive technology. Return fire, Chen ordered. Full broadside. Let's see how they handle kinetic penetrators. The Leviathan's main guns opened fire, sending streams of solid projectiles accelerated to significant fractions of light speed. The shots struck the lead Devourer ship, and for a moment it seemed like the attack had no effect. Then the alien vessel began to buckle and twist as the kinetic energy tore through its organic hull. But instead of exploding like a normal ship, the damaged Devourer seemed to absorb the destroyed sections, growing slightly larger as it incorporated the debris into its structure. Well, Chen said quietly, that's interesting. Tactical analysis of enemy response to kinetic weapons. The ship took significant structural damage but somehow converted the destruction into additional mass and capabilities. It's like the damage made it stronger, Admiral. Chen nodded. Then we'll have to try something different. All ships switch to energy weapons. Maximum intensity. Let's see if they can absorb plasma as easily as solid matter. The human fleet opened fire with everything they had, painting space with beams of coherent energy and streams of superheated plasma. The Devourer ships responded in kind, and the space between the two fleets became a deadly light show of competing technologies. Admiral, Communications Officer Torres called out urgently, I'm receiving a transmission from the civilian fleet. They're asking if we need support. Chen almost smiled. Tell them negative. We're just getting started, and patch me through to the fleet. She activated the ship-wide communications. All hands, this is Admiral Chen. Today we face an enemy that feeds on destruction and grows stronger from the death of innocence. They've consumed entire worlds and believe themselves unstoppable. They're about to learn something about humans that no one else in the galaxy fully understands. We don't just fight to win. We fight because it's what we do. We fight because someone has to. And we fight because no one else can. Take us to battle stations and show these things what happens when they threaten our friends. The battle raged for 27 minutes before Admiral Chen realized that conventional weapons weren't going to be enough. The Devourers had adapted to human energy weapons faster than anyone thought possible. The first few ships struck by plasma cannons had been badly damaged, their organic hulls burning and writhing under the intense heat. But subsequent attacks seemed less effective, as if the surviving ships were learning from each engagement and developing countermeasures in real time. "Admiral," Commander Reeves called out over the sound of weapons fire and damage reports, "enemy fleet is regrouping. They're forming some kind of collective formation. Energy readings are spiking across all hostile vessels." Through the main viewport, Chen could see the Devourer ships arranging themselves into a complex pattern that seemed to pulse with shared energy. As she watched, damaged ships were somehow transferring their wounds to healthier vessels, which then converted the damage into additional armor plating and weapon systems. "They're sharing resources," she realized. "It's not individual ships we're fighting. It's a collective organism that uses multiple bodies." "Ma'am," Torres reported from communications, "the civilian fleet is requesting permission to jump to hyperspace. They say their quantum tunnel generators are back online." "Negative," Chen replied immediately. "If they jump now, they'll lead these things directly to populated systems. We end this here." The Leviathan shuddered as another volley of Devourer weapons struck home. These latest shots were different. Instead of simple energy beams, they seemed to carry some kind of viral component that tried to infect the ship's systems and convert them to Devourer technology. "Hull breach on Deck 7, came the damage control report. "The breach is growing, Admiral. It's converting our hull plating into some kind of organic material." Chen made a decision that would have horrified most other species, but was perfectly logical to a human military mind. "Emergency Containment Protocol 7. Vent that entire section to space. Use emergency charges to sever connections to the rest of the ship." "Ma'am, we have 17 crew members on that deck. And we have 400,000 civilians counting on us to stop these things. Execute the order." The section of hull infected by Devourer technology was blown away from the ship in a controlled explosion, taking the viral contamination with it. The 17 crew members had already sealed themselves into emergency shelters and would be recovered later, if there was a later. "All ships," Chen broadcast to her fleet, "switch to containment protocols. Any section compromised by enemy technology is to be immediately isolated and jettisoned. We cannot allow them to convert our ships." Captain Rodriguez's voice came back from the Valkyrie. "Admiral, my engineering team is reporting that conventional weapons aren't working anymore. The enemy is adapting faster than we can adjust our tactics." Chen studied the tactical display, watching as more Devourer ships arrived from deeper in the system. The massive construct they'd detected earlier was also approaching, its energy signature growing stronger with each passing moment. At this rate, even the human fleet would be overwhelmed through sheer numbers and adaptive capability. "Morrison," she called to her chief engineer, "status on the experimental weapons." "The quantum disruptors are charged and ready, Admiral. But I have to warn you, we've never tested them against living targets. The theoretical models suggest they could cause unpredictable reactions in organic matter." "Explain." "The disruptors work by breaking down the bonds between subatomic particles. Against conventional technology, they simply cause matter to dissolve. But against something that's actively alive and adapting, it could cause uncontrolled chain reactions." Chen looked out at the approaching Devourer fleet. Dozens of ships, each one growing larger and more dangerous as it fed on the energy of the battle. Behind them, the massive construct that looked more like a living organism than any kind of ship humanity had ever encountered. "Uncontrolled chain reactions," she said quietly. "That doesn't sound like a bug, Captain Morrison. That sounds like a feature." She activated the fleet command frequency. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen. We're switching to experimental weapons, quantum disruptors, full spread. Target the largest concentration of enemy ships." "Ma'am," Reeves said uncertainly, "if the chain reactions spread beyond the intended targets, then we'll deal with that when it happens. Right now, those civilians need us to stop these things, and conventional weapons aren't working. Sometimes you have to fight fire with fire." The human fleet adjusted course to bring their experimental weapons to bear. The quantum disruptors were mounted in the forward sections of each ship, massive devices that had been designed to break apart asteroids for mining operations. No one had ever considered using them as weapons until human engineers started thinking about ways to fight enemies that couldn't be killed by conventional means. "Disruptors charged and ready," Morrison reported. "Targeting the main enemy formation. All ships, fire." Beams of twisted space-time lanced out from the human fleet, striking the center of the Devourer formation. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the first enemy ship simply ceased to exist, its matter dissolving into component atoms as the quantum disruptor broke down the forces holding it together. But the effect didn't stop there. The dissolving ship released a wave of energy that struck the vessels around it, and those ships began to dissolve as well. The chain reaction spread through the Devourer formation like wildfire, each dying ship feeding energy to the destruction of its neighbors. "My God," Morrison whispered, watching the spreading destruction. "It's working. The organic nature of their technology is actually making them more vulnerable to the disruptors. They're all connected, so the chain reaction is following their own communication links." Half the Devourer fleet vanished in less than 2 minutes, their organic hulls unable to resist the quantum dissolution once it began spreading through their shared systems. The remaining ships broke formation and began fleeing toward the edge of the system, their collective intelligence apparently recognizing that they faced something beyond their ability to adapt to. "Pursue and destroy," Chen ordered. "Don't let any of them escape. If even one of these things reaches populated space, it could reproduce what happened here." The human fleet gave chase, their ships built for exactly this kind of relentless pursuit. The destroyers Reaper and Phantom were fastest, catching the fleeing Devourers and finishing them with conventional weapons, now that the collective intelligence was broken and the ships couldn't share adaptive capabilities. "Admiral," Torres called from communications, "the civilian fleet is requesting permission to assist in cleanup operations." Chen looked at the tactical display. The immediate threat was over, but the massive construct was still approaching from the inner system. Whatever it was, it dwarfed everything else they'd encountered. "Tell the civilian fleet to maintain safe distance but begin rescue operations for any survivors from destroyed ships. All combat vessels form up on the Leviathan. We still have one more target to deal with." As the human fleet regrouped, the construct finally came into clear sensor range. It was enormous, over 50 kilometers long and shaped like some kind of living organism. Energy readings suggested it was the source of the smaller Devourer ships, a factory that converted consumed matter into new vessels for its fleet. "No life signs," Reeves reported, "but massive energy readings throughout the structure. It appears to be some kind of automated system, possibly left behind by whatever species created the Devourers." "Can we destroy it?" "Unknown, ma'am. It's heavily armored and shows multiple redundant systems. Conventional weapons might not penetrate the outer layers." Chen studied the readings, noting the patterns of energy flow through the massive structure. It reminded her of something she'd studied during her military education, the neural networks of certain predatory species from Earth's oceans. "Morrison, Can we adapt the quantum disruptors to target the energy patterns instead of physical matter? Theoretically, yes, but the power requirements would be enormous. We'd have to channel the output from all 7 ships through a single focal point. The Leviathan can handle it. Tie all ships' disruptors into our main array. We're going to perform surgery on this thing. While Morrison coordinated with the other ship's engineering teams, Chen opened a channel to the civilian fleet. Commander Thexara, this is Admiral Chen. We're about to engage the main enemy construct. I want your ships to jump to hyperspace immediately. If this doesn't work, you need to warn the rest of the Union about what's coming. Admiral, Thexara's voice was firm despite the stress of the last few days. My people want to stay and witness the end of this. These things destroyed our worlds, our families. We need to see them finished. Chen understood the sentiment. If someone had destroyed Earth, she'd want to watch the bastards burn too. Stay at maximum safe distance. What we're about to attempt has never been done before. The human ships arranged themselves in formation around the Leviathan, their quantum disruptors linked through power conduits that Morrison's team had hastily rigged between the vessels. The massive construct continued its approach, apparently unaware that the bulk of its fleet had been destroyed. Power levels at maximum, Morrison reported. All ships reporting ready. Ma'am, if this doesn't work, the feedback could destroy our entire fleet. And if we don't try, that thing will eventually produce enough ships to threaten every inhabited system in the galaxy. Fire when ready. The combined output of 7 quantum disruptors focused through the Leviathan's main array created a beam of twisted space-time that struck the construct at its center. For several seconds, nothing seemed to happen. Then cracks appeared along the massive structure's hull, spreading outward like fractures in ice. It's working! Reeves called out excitedly. The energy patterns are collapsing. The quantum field is disrupting the neural networks that control the construct. The 50-kilometer structure began to break apart, its organic systems failing as the quantum disruption spread through its control networks. Secondary explosions lit up its hull as internal power systems overloaded and destroyed themselves. Within 10 minutes, the greatest threat the Kalani system had ever faced was reduced to drifting debris. All ships, cease fire, Chen ordered. Tactical, scan for any remaining hostile vessels. Space is clear, Admiral. No enemy contacts detected. For the first time in days, the Kalani system was quiet. The refugee fleet began broadcasting messages of gratitude and disbelief. After 3 days of hopeless flight, they had been saved by ships from beyond the edge of known space. Admiral Chen, Commander Thexara's voice came through clearly now that the Devourer jamming had ended. How can we ever thank you? We thought we were going to die out here. Chen looked out at the debris field that had once been a threat to all intelligent life in the galaxy. You don't need to thank us, Commander. This is what we do. I don't understand. Why would humans risk their lives for people they'd never met? The question made Chen pause. How could she explain to someone from a peaceful species that humans had evolved in a world where cooperation and protection of the group was essential for survival? How could she make them understand that humans didn't see it as heroic or unusual to risk everything for strangers in need? Because someone had to, she said finally, and because we could. Over the next several hours, the human fleet helped coordinate rescue operations and began the process of escorting the civilian ships to safety. The experimental quantum tunnel drives had proven their worth, and plans were already being made to share the technology with other Union species. As the Leviathan prepared to resume its patrol of the Galactic Rim, Chen received a priority message from Union Command. Word of the Kalani system incident had already reached the core worlds, and the Union Council was requesting a full briefing on both the Devourer threat and the human response. Admiral, Torres reported, we're receiving transmission requests from 17 different news organizations. Apparently, the story of humans emerging from the abyss to save the day is already spreading through the communications networks. Chen shook her head. Humans didn't fight for glory or recognition. They fought because it was necessary, because they were the ones with the capability to make a difference when it mattered most. "Decline the interviews," she ordered. "We have more important work to do." She looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere out there, other threats might be emerging from the darkness between galaxies. The Devourers had been defeated, but they were probably not unique. The universe was vast and dangerous, full of things that wanted to consume or destroy everything in their path. But humanity would be watching. From the edge of known space, from ships that emerged from the abyss when hope seemed lost, they would be ready to respond when civilians needed protection and no one else could provide it. It was what they did. It was what they were. The Leviathan and her escort fleet turned back toward the galactic rim, their sensors already scanning for the next threat, the next distress call, the next impossible situation that would require someone willing to risk everything for strangers they might never meet. In the vast darkness of space, humanity kept its eternal watch, ready to burst from the abyss whenever hope was needed most.